Florida is a state with an environment like no other. Surrounded by water on three sides, Florida is dotted with marshes, rivers, lakes, and sparkling springs. Shining like jewels when seen from the air, these unique natural communities teem with wildlife. These special qualities attract visitors and new residents to our state every day. As Florida's population increases, so does development throughout the state. This increased development puts increased demands on our natural resources and has made it necessary to preserve areas to protect Florida's water resources. Wetlands are among those water resources. A wetland is an area that is saturated or soaked by ground surface water frequently or for prolonged periods of time. Wetlands serve many beneficial purposes, including filtering pollutants from water, storing floodwaters, and providing natural habitat for fish and wildlife. Most land development, including residential subdivisions, require permits from the St. Johns River Water Management District to ensure that these projects will not cause flooding, degrade state waters, or adversely affect wetlands or other surface waters. To address flooding and water quality, permitted projects usually include stormwater ponds that hold and treat water before it enters streams, lakes, or rivers. To protect wetlands or to mitigate or offset impacts from permitted construction projects, the wetlands that remain on the permitted site, along with natural areas bordering them, are usually placed in a conservation easement. Often, these easements are on future home lots. Mitigation frequently involves a developer or property owner preserving property by granting a conservation easement to a regulatory agency or other conservation organization. In this video, we will be looking at conservation easements granted to or purchased by the St. Johns River Water Management District. What is a conservation easement? A conservation easement is a voluntary transfer of property rights, wherein an owner agrees to restrict the activities that may take place on his or her property. The easement transfers specific property or proprietary rights to a third party. To understand the concept of conservation easements, think of owning land as a bundle of rights. A landowner may sell or give away the whole bundle, or just one or two of those rights. These may include, for example, waiving the right to construct buildings or other structures, to dump soil, trash, waste, or other harmful materials, to excavate, dredge, or remove soil or peat or otherwise affect the surface, or to remove, destroy, or trim trees, shrubs, or other vegetation. Conservation easements protect and preserve open spaces, groundwater recharge areas, environmentally sensitive lands, wildlife habitat, and historical features. The owner and the prospective easement holder identify the rights and restrictions on use that are necessary to protect the property. In short, what can and cannot be done on the property. The specific rights a property owner gives up when granting a conservation easement are spelled out in the easement document. This legal document is then recorded in the public records of the county in which the property is located to provide notice to the public and prospective buyers that the conservation easement exists. These restrictions on the use of the property are conveyed with the title to the land and are thus transferred along as the property is bought and sold. When granted as part of a district-approved mitigation plan, the conservation easement must be granted to the district forever, known as in perpetuity. What are the benefits of having a conservation easement? When conservation easements are used to offset or mitigate the functions of certain habitats, like wetlands, they are part of a larger picture of land preservation and water resource protection. Through the use of conservation easements, the landowner and state agencies, such as the district, are helping to ensure that Florida's wildlife will always have suitable homes, and that current and future generations of residents and visitors have an opportunity to enjoy a healthy environment. In addition to their environmental value, conservation easements may provide some economic benefits to the adjacent landowners. In fact, Studies suggest that properties located in close proximity to preserved lands retain their value better than properties that are not located near preserved lands. It is important to remember that conservation easements must be properly managed in order to provide maximum benefits for people and wildlife. Now let's address some common questions concerning conservation easements asked by homeowners.
Well, how do I know if I have a conservation easement on my property?
Any conservation easements that were recorded in public records prior to the purchase of your property will be included in the title search that was done on your property. Because the easement is recorded in public records, the public, including landowners, are put on notice that the easement exists.
I have a conservation easement on my property, but I don't know where it ends. How can I determine where the conservation easement is on my property?
The conservation easement document, or the recorded plat for your subdivision, should contain a legal description and sketch showing the location and dimensions of the preserved area on your property. While the boundary of conservation easements may be permanently marked with survey posts or stakes, as with any property boundary, only a survey by a certified land surveyor can accurately delineate the boundary of a conservation easement.
Why doesn't the district manage these conservation areas?
The St. Johns River Water Management District is not the landowner and is not responsible for maintaining the conservation easement. However, the district does monitor conservation areas to ensure they are being maintained according to the provisions of the permit and recorded conservation easement documents. If you see any activity that may be a violation of provisions of a district permit or an activity harmful to the easement lands, please contact the district.
Who is responsible for protecting the natural resources in the conservation easement area?
Typically, protection of conservation easement areas is the responsibility of the title holder or of whoever performs their maintenance. As such, it is recommended that you first contact your homeowners association to determine who is responsible for the maintenance according to the permit that includes this conservation easement. You should then contact the responsible party regarding management activities within the easement. As the person living closest to the easement area, you can help ensure the area remains healthy by notifying the party responsible for the easement's maintenance or your homeowners association of any conditions and activities that could be harmful. Examples of harmful conditions and activities include such things as mowing, dumping yard wastes into the easement area, removing vegetation, non-native or exotic plants growing in the area, placing soil or other materials in the area, removing soil or other materials from the area, and constructing fences in the area.
The conservation easement behind my house is overgrown and looks messy. May I trim the weeds in the easement so it looks better?
To be certain, you would need to review the specific easement document. However, conservation easements usually prohibit the destruction, clearing, or trimming of any vegetation within the easement area. An exception to this is the removal of exotic or nuisance plants as part of a site-specific management plan. You should contact the district to determine if the conservation area has plants classified as exotics.
What if someone other than the Water Management District told me that I could mow the conservation area?
Don't go by what others tell you. You need to review the recorded legal document that spells out exactly what you can and cannot do with your specific conservation easement.
The conservation easement behind my house has dead trees in it. May I remove dead vegetation from the conservation easement?
As with removing live vegetation, the answer is no. Dead trees and other vegetation provide invaluable habitat for a diversity of wildlife species. Also, removal of a dead tree could remove some of the easement's natural functions that were providing environmental protection. However, if a dead or damaged tree poses a hazard to a residence, the district may give permission to remove the tree or to minimize the hazard in other ways.
The back portion of my property has a conservation easement. Am I allowed to construct a trail through the easement?
While you typically may walk through the easement and, in time, regularly used trails may become established, The construction of trails that requires adding or removing soil, rock, mulch, or other materials, or removing vegetation is prohibited.
I live on a lake. Can I build a dock or a pier through the conservation easement area to get to my boat?
Construction of boardwalks or piers is allowed only if the easement's legal records specifically state that the right to do so has been retained by the landowner.
If there is a conservation easement on my property, are other people allowed on the property?
Typically, conservation easements do not grant the right of public access.
It's my property. What would happen if I build something on the conservation easement or damage it in some way?
The district realizes that the majority of homeowners understand how important conservation easements are for protecting Florida's natural environment and are willing to work together to resolve problems from unauthorized activities. However, because certain property rights to a conservation easement are given to the district may take all necessary means to protect the conservation easement area and the natural resources found there. The district can go to court to obtain an order forcing the violator to restore the damaged property and to obtain a fine or penalty for damaging the property. The natural lands protected by conservation easements granted to government agencies are invaluable assets to protect Florida's unique environment. Properly cared for and managed, these preserved areas will ensure that areas protecting water resources and natural habitats are maintained throughout the state. This will allow for the economic growth needed to support the state's growing population, while making sure Florida remains a place that people will want to visit and live in.